Hi, everybody. This is Brian Chrisman.
Shane Kelly.
Adam Murdo.
Matt.
Chris Eberly.
Peter Rios.
And we're from the Comic Geek Speak podcast.
On May 2nd of this year, our friend and fellow podcaster, Jamie D'Alessandro, lost his battle with cancer.
In honor of Jamie, we are participating in a 5K and 10K race to raise money for the Livestrong Foundation, which provides support for people with cancer.
We will be taking part in the Team Livestrong Challenge, Philly, on Sunday, August 17th in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania.
We are collectively running
and walking
under the team name of Jamie's Avengers.
If you'd like to join us in the event or make a donation to our team, go to livestrong.org and search for Jamie's Avengers.
Thank you all for your time, and
Jamie's Avengers Assemble!
Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.com. Welcome to the show. I have Travis back as co-host. Hi, Travis.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Great.
So we had so much fun last episode talking about Forever Evil that I wanted to have Travis back on very soon and to talk about some other comics that we are reading. Both of us are reading. So we're going to talk about those today. One of them is Coffin Hill, and we're going to talk about Batman Eternal, and then maybe some other things as we go along. We'll see how this goes. So it goes without saying that we will be talking about these comics somewhat in detail. So be warned that if you haven't read these things or if you've been waiting for the trade, so to speak, then we may be spoiling those things for you. Anyway. So, Travis, I talked about Coffin Hill #1 back in December 2013. So that came out about that time, and I was really impressed with that comic. And I don't even remember why I decided to pick it up. I just something about the solicitation text. I don't even remember what it is now, but it just looked interesting. I think I saw a few preview pages, and so I decided to pick it up. And then I read that first issue. I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. And as it's gone on, and at this point, at the time of this recording, issue 8 has come out, basically starting a new storyline. And I'm still loving the hell out of this comic. What about you?
Yes, and I'm excited that I enjoyed the first arc, and I'm really excited about this new arc that's just starting because it's going to fill in some stuff that happened that we get kind of like a brief picture of in the first arc is now going back, and we're getting filling in some details about the main character's past that I've been curious about while I was reading that first arc. So,
and it's not though that we didn't get bits and pieces in that first arc. I mean, I should back up. So this is written by Caitlin Kittredge, with art by Inaki Miranda, which phenomenal work there.
Amazing. Yeah.
Let's see here. Hold on a second. I got to flip to the back. Dave Johnson has been doing the covers, which have been, for the most part, I've just been knocking it out of the park. The stuff he's doing on the covers is really cool. Eva De La Cruz is the colorist. Travis Lanham, the letter. That's the latest issue. I think that's the same team that's been on it for the most part.
Yes.
But it's Kittredge and Miranda that's doing a hell of a job. Well, the colorist too, because there's some panels in this book where the color really sells the image and sells that bit of story that they're trying to get across. So, yeah, like I said, we've been getting little bits and pieces as the first 6 issues have gone on for that first story. Issue number 7 was like an interstitial story where we see the main character, Eve Coffin, her mother. That's her mother in that story. And I think it's set in the 50s.
Right.
And so we kind of get to see how things played out for her when she was younger. And then like I said like you said in issue number 8 is the launch of the next storyline, which is they're calling Dark Endeavors. So Travis, do you want to talk about just in general what Coffin Hill is about?
So Coffin Hill is about a character named Eve Coffin, and the Coffin family, basically the family estate, and I can't remember what is it Coffin Hill? Is that just the estate, or is that the town? Anyway, this area, this woods around it, and whatnot, it's been in the family for forever. And the women of the family are witches. I don't think we've ever been shown exactly how the whole witch thing works. Some of it seems to be spell, and some of it seems to be some like just natural talent to manipulate reality in some fashion or another. And something bad happened in Eve's past that gets some people killed and some people sent to the crazy house. And Eve tries to get away from all that, moves away, seemingly becomes a policeman. Some bad things happen there, and she ends up back at the Coffin Hill estate, kind of dealing with the ramifications of the stuff that happened in her past. Does that kind of cover it?
Yeah, pretty much. And so we have, like you mentioned, some of the people that were affected by this. What were they trying to do a spell? I'm a little fuzzy on the details now. They were trying to do a spell in the woods.
They were doing a goofy seance that I think some of them thought was just kind of them messing around, but the reality is the spell that they were using was actually some big heavyweight thing that was going to contact the whatever it is that's in the woods of Coffin Hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, like you said, one of the friends, one of Eve's friends, gets affected by this. One ends up dead. One ends up in the crazy house, and the other person, I'm forgetting now. There's also the male friend who ends up being the police chief in the area. I think Nate is his name.
He's a sheriff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you have that relationship at when Eve returns, and so Eve used to be a police officer. Do we know where that was, Travis?
I want to say like Boston.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I can't remember for sure if that's the case, but it's something like
yeah,
that.
because Coffin Hill is set in Massachusetts, so I assumed it was Boston. But she's just a beat cop there.
Well, fresh out of the academy.
Yeah, she's new, but she gets famous or infamous depending on how you want to look at it, by helping capture the ice fisher.
Yeah, a
serial killer. Yeah,
and we don't.
Yeah, and she ends up killing him, but we don't get a whole lot of detail there.
Right.
In that first arc, just little bits and pieces here and there, but that's where we're starting to get more information is in the new arc in number 8. Mm-hmm. Along the way, the big bad thing that they brought forth in that seance ends up taking over the body of her friend Mel, I believe. And that's basically the whole first storyline is Eve taking on this thing that's infested her friend. But it ends that first arc ends with the one of the cops that she worked with on the Ice Fisher case coming to her and arresting her for the murder of his former partner, which I thought that just came. And I don't remember, Travis, because I was flipping through the issues, and I don't remember that being part of it until that very last panel.
Yeah, well, see, because part of what we didn't talk about the fact is that after she basically, kills this serial killer, that if she's a hero, she goes home that night to home and ends up getting into a shootout with a drug dealer or an abusive friend of one of her friends, and gets wounded. So she's got this blown out eye that looks funky, and that's why she ends up, once they start investigating exactly how she came across what she came across, there seems to be some stuff that doesn't jive, and that's mentioned in the first issue. There's a montage panels of while she's under surgery that kind of shows that potentially some questionable police work was done, and some questionable things were done in those first issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we end up leading back to. I mean, that's one of the reasons why she ends up going home, is because she has no place to go, because she is under suspicion. She's had her badger gun and all that kind of stuff taken away from her because she's under suspicion. So she goes home to kind of hide out. So there is that little bit there that talks about that.
Mm-hmm, that's true, but like I said, maybe it's my bad memory. But when I read that scene at the end of issue 6, I was just like, what did I miss? Am I that bad of a reader of this comic that I enjoy so much that I just totally missed this thing where it was revealed that she killed this guy, or is this the big reveal? No,
that's the big reveal.
Yeah, okay.
That's the big reveal. Never before that did it say that she killed anybody. Just that there was some questionable. That she was under investigation, and it was kind of left that. And I think us as a reader might have thought that, well, she's under investigation for the shooting of this other guy that shot her too, that drug dealing, whatever the heck he was.
Right.
I think that kind of left us with that potentially was what she was under investigation for. And
mm-hmm.
and then in issue 6 we get this reveal that she's being accused of having killed a partner. Kind of a thing.
Okay, so part of my hesitation here in discussing this is that I haven't read some of those first issues in a while. I mean, like I said, it came out in December-ish, but this book goes back and forth in time a lot. You get flashbacks all the time, and we're not given a whole lot of information in those flashbacks, or even in the current storyline. You get information, but you're not getting a whole lot of reveal, I guess. And so things have to be filled in and fleshed out, and so that's where that, I guess, like I said, that hesitation is coming from. But that's something I really like about this book, is that we're not spoon-fed everything as in every issue, and every issue doesn't have a recap, and we're experiencing the story as we're reading it. It's being, like I said, filled in as we go along. And you know what? It reminds me, we're reading a novel here in comic book form.
Right. Exactly.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising because Caitlin Kittredge.
That's, yeah.
She writes books. So, right. Although not books that I've read. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an exciting book. I do like that storytelling. I like the way that's being done, and the information that's being withheld doesn't feel frustrating. It's not like it's written well in the fact that it doesn't feel like, okay, I need these pieces to understand what's going on. You don't need those pieces to understand what's going on. Because it's pretty clear most of the time what's happening. It's just when we get these little pieces, then it fills in other little bits and pieces to make you go, oh, a little more about what's going on. It adds another layer to what's going on, kind of thing. Whereas some stories that, where they're withholding stuff from you, you really feel like it's being withheld, as opposed to we just haven't learned that yet, kind of a thing.
Right, exactly.
But I'm like I said, I'm excited by this. I really like the first story and whatnot. I didn't need that information about what happened in her past that put her where she's at. The details, but I'm excited to get to see some of those details, to find out, really how is it that she discovered this serial killer? Because, I mean, it's not like witchcraft is an acknowledged thing that actually has some actual power to it. I mean, she's kind of operating, relatively in secret, and she's using some of that, using her power to some degree to get her closer and get the information that she needs to make this happen. So, and I would assume, just with the way her history is of things never going quite the way she wants them to, that there's going to be some darker secret as to why what happened. Why is she being accused of this murder? And she doesn't seem relatively upset that she's been accused of this. It seems to be that she's pretty casual with the fact that, yep. So I'm excited to see what transpired to make this thing all happen. So.
Mm-hmm. I will say, Travis, though, that I was a little concerned about the longevity of this book for a couple reasons. One is, and I don't know what the sales are of this book, but it is, I would consider this kind of a fringe book. I mean, it's through Vertigo.
It's so a Vertigo book.
Oh yeah, definitely. But so Vertigo books tend to have lower sales anyway, and I just don't hear anybody talking about this book. Do you?
No. I mean, I've got a few friends that I know that collect it, but
yeah.
no.
So I'm really concerned that it'll be canceled.
But yeah, I mean, I hear you saying. I don't hear people talk a lot about a lot of Vertigo books, though.
That's true.
When people start talking about non-superhero books, it's Image, because Image is really, putting itself out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those books that's good. I guess there's always that possibility that it's threatened. But yeah, because we don't hear a lot of people talk about. But like I said, it never seems like people talk a lot about Vertigo books as a whole. But it really does feel like a Vertigo book to me, though. I mean, if I didn't know it was from Vertigo, that would be my first guess as to it. It has that sensibility to it. So I'm assuming it has an audience that's bigger than what we think. It's just not an audience that we hear talking about comics, because that audience doesn't talk about comics.
Yeah, possibly. That's true.
I hope.
Yeah. But the other thing that I was thinking about in terms of the longevity was, okay, so the basic premise of the first storyline is really interesting. There's this missing person. Eve Coffin comes home to help out because she realizes there's some witchcraft or magic involved in it, and so she can't help but poke her nose into things. And she's been portrayed as a bit of a rebel. When we get the flashbacks with her as a younger person, she takes every opportunity to stick it to her mom and her parents. There's a scene where they're having a big party, and she just comes out and just disrupts everything, and then goes out and they do that's the seance thing or whatever it is. That's not the right word. Seance is not the right word, is it? I keep trying to think. I keep thinking there's a word that I'm trying to think of in the back of my head as I'm talking. They're trying to conjure something up. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Do some sort of ritual. Mm-hmm.
Ritual, yeah, exactly. So they do that, and that's pretty much where the issue ends. The first issue ends with the reveal of the aftermath of that ritual.
Right.
I want to talk about the art about that in particular in a minute. So you have that storyline, and then, like I said, it ends with the demon. I'll just say demon for lack of a better word, but the demon, of course, being taken care of. Kind of, yeah, through Eve's actions. And then, they set up the next storyline where she's accused of murdering the detective that she worked with on the Ice Fisher case. Mm-hmm. But what, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing necessarily. I'm just concerned, what else is there in this universe that's been set up? Where can they go with this stuff?
Well, my understanding from when it all first started, listening to the author the writer talk about it, that it's basically going to be the equivalent of a bunch of ghost stories around this area. So I would suspect that at some point after we square away this thing that's happened in our recent past, that we're going to still continue to deal with Coffin Hill itself and whatever it is that's the presence that's still clearly in the forest. I don't think that's really been taken care of, right? So I think we're going to keep going back to that. We're going to keep going back to, you're going to have this large thing that's out there that they deal with in small bits and pieces, while they also deal with whatever else is going on.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. If people aren't willing to sit around and read the long story, then that's, I can see why you'd be worrisome if there aren't enough readers out there who are willing to not have everything answered for them in one or two issues.
See, and so we talked about this on last episode where I was complaining about the DC universe not, or the editorial mandates not letting the DC universe characters breathe in their stories, and yet here we have a story, a comic book that's exactly what's going on here, and I'm worried about. I'm worried about maybe there's too much breathing, not enough action-y bits to keep people interested. I don't know. I enjoy this book so much that I just want to see it keep going, which is partly why we decided to talk about it.
Right.
And so let me just entice the listeners out there who haven't given Coffin Hill a chance too. Let's talk about the art a little bit.
Oh,
The Inaki Miranda art.
amazing stuff.
Are you familiar with Miranda's work?
No.
Elsewhere?
This is my first exposure to, and it's amazing.
So there is a scene. I'm just going to, because this is the scene that sold this book for me. There's a scene towards the end of issue 1 where, and a lot of this has to do with the color artist too, but there's a scene after the ritual in the forest years ago, and Eve is waking up in the morning, and so the first panel on one of the pages here is she sees all these ravens or crows, I don't know which ones they are, up above in the trees, and they're just cawing and cawing. And then the next panel is Eve there next to a naked woman, and it's Mel, it's her friend Mel, who's the one that ends up going crazy, but then ends up being possessed by this thing. And so Eve asks Mel, where's Danny, which is the other girl that they're friends with. And then the rest of the page, so it's basically more than half a page panel here of Mel, kind of she's holding her leg, kind of holding herself, everything close together, and there's blood all around. There's blood all over her. There's blood all over Eve, for that matter. And there's all these dead, looks like rats and birds everywhere on the ground. And Mel says she's with them now. She's gone to the dark things. And her face is she appears very calm and she's just kind of sitting there. She's not really dazed looking, but she's not really focused on anything. And then the next panel, the next page, is her screaming silently with the trees and the birds in the background just kind of faded out in the background. And that is what that whole scene. You have to see it.
Yeah.
I mean,
she has crazy eyes.
Yeah, those wide, crazy eyes.
Holy crap!
I cannot describe it well enough. You really have to look at it, and it's the way that this story is told through the art is so cinematic. Mm-hmm. This could be very easily adapted into a movie. Mm-hmm. As long as they do it, kind of dark and creepy and whatnot. It's so well done. Eve often is shown as very pale with really dark. The liner around her eyes is really dark, so that makes the feature of her face really you really focus on her eyes all the time. There's lots of, just the shading of the work. There's a lot of like blues and grays to denote like the kind of the overcast nature. I want to say that's a really poor way to say it, but how things are kind of looming over this area, especially over the Coffin estate. But there are a few scenes like the one I just described in issue 1 throughout this, where it's just like suddenly an image will just pop out and it's kind of creepy in a way, because when I first saw that scene, it really creeped me out. I think a lesser writer, a lesser artist would have put some caption in there, some dialogue box or something, where Mel is screaming silently, but they would have added noise. They would have taken that extra step. Like a huge word balloon where she's just screaming at the top of her lungs, and it makes the birds fly away. I'm rewriting the story now, but
right.
But it's just the ability of Kittredge and Miranda to tell this story in the way that they're doing it, I think is just something I haven't seen a lot in comics. Mm-hmm. And I'm really appreciative of that, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, that scene, basically made the hair stand up in my arms, kind of a thing. That whole was perfect.
Exactly.
It was that perfect kind of, and you're right. It was the delivery of it, because that could easily have been, cliche-ish or pretty stereotypical of a quasi horror, scary type book, because that's what this kind of is. It's kind of it's a mystery, but it's kind of a ghost story, kind of a
dark fantasy.
creepy kind of thing, right? And I mean, it could have been delivered in a fashion that was just like, oh, we've seen that like a million times, whatever. But the way it's done, it is done really, really well. And that image of her screaming, yeah, as soon as anybody says Coffin Hill, that literally is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yes,
is
exactly.
her face, and then the second that comes to mind is our current Eve's face. You know, with that, she's got that one weird eye because she got shot in the side of the head, so she has that one kind of blown out pupil eye and whatnot that always comes to mind. But that's always the first thing. That Mel covered in blood, you know, silently screaming is certainly always the first thing that comes to mind. You know, and the art also, they do a great job of every time they bounce back, because they play around with time as far as, you know, being in the present or being in the past. In that first arc, which there are lots of artists that do it. It is done really well. The way it's colored and stuff, immediately you know that you're, even if the young Eve isn't on the panel, you immediately know it's this older. It's this, you know, time when she was a teenager as opposed to the young adult. By the way it's colored and stuff, it's just immediately, you know, obvious that that's where you're at. It's just done really well.
And not just the colors. I was looking at just now you were talking, I was looking at the latest issue, number 8. And I don't know if they were doing this throughout. I don't remember. But at least in this issue, the inks are a lot heavier in the flashback stuff. So you get the lines that are a lot, the black lines that are generally a lot thicker, and like you say, the colors are a bit darker than what's going on in the present time to help you orient yourself. So I really like that too.
Yeah,
and just sometimes the panel arrangement is interesting. Just the inset panels and sometimes using round panels to tell the story. It's just visually, it's just an interesting book, and the use of the gutters. Sometimes the gutters are really thick in here, and sometimes they're not. You know, it's just the way that Miranda's telling the story here is just really interesting.
Well, and also speaking of visuals, to way to give us the idea that there's something going on, in some of the ways they go about that. Each of the Coffin females, they all seem to be, you know, these witches, or whatever you want to call them, witches, I guess is what they're going with. When their powers work, stuff happens around them. In the case of like Eve, it's these black feathers tend to flow all over the place. And I don't know if that's something everybody sees or that's something that's just visually there for us as the reader to let us know without it. It's just an interesting, different way of doing it. Her mom, it's flies. When her power is building up and she's affecting things, it seems to be flies suddenly start showing up all over the place. I haven't decided whether or not that's something that actually, you know, happens in reality and needs to be explained, or that's just that's the artist's way of showing us that, you know, there's some powers building up or whatever. And to me, that's really interesting too, and visually striking that each of these people have their own individual whatever that is. Just it's fascinating too.
Yeah, wow, you know, you talking about that makes me think what my concern that I expressed earlier might be just premature, because how many, you know, we could really they could open up the story to be so much more and involve so many more characters and more witches and we have a whole town, if not this whole, you know, area that they could draw in. It reminds me of our talk about Revival some episodes ago, where you know we talked a lot about how rich that universe was or is, and I think this book has the very same potential. We're only 8 issues in, whereas I think Revival we were in the 20s when we talked about that.
Right.
So there's a lot more kind of fleshed out. But there are a lot more characters being introduced in Revival even at the early stages than I think that we have so far in Coffin Hill. But that's fine. The story can focus on just a few people and expand as needed to tell the story that they want to tell. I guess I was unconsciously thinking of Revival when I was expressing my criticism of this book. Thinking that we need to have more people involved to get, you know, the readership more involved in what's going on here and not be so tightly focused. But that's part of the charm of this book too. So I guess I'm arguing against myself. That it's so tightly focused on what's going on with Eve and the characters they've introduced so far that it's made it a really interesting story.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of the things that also make it interesting beyond the flashy stuff about the story, the witchcraft and the spirit or demon thing or whatever it is and whatnot. It's also, I thought, really written just from a perspective of, if you take somebody who's lived someplace who has a reputation as a teen, and they did all this stuff and they are kind of notorious, they leave and go away. And for some reason, they're forced to have to come back, and then they have to kind of answer and deal with the repercussions of their behavior back then. And she definitely has to do that in this. And it's even beyond the whole, the fact they did this ritual thing and this one girl literally disappeared, other than there's a whole bunch of blood around and whatnot. She's gone and presumed dead or whatever. Just the fact is that there was this whole dynamic between boyfriends and who was flirting with whose boyfriend and having to answer to those other types of things. I thought that was a really interesting part of the story. Just like I said, having, being kind of a notorious person, going away and having to come back home and then being forced to face up to, some of those behaviors, I thought was really written really well and really interesting, and made those characters interesting.
Yeah, and I think we haven't even really scratched the surface of that. I mean, yes, they dealt with her relationship with Nate and with Mel,
right,
and some other people, mm-hmm. But I'm sure there are many more that can come out of the woodwork.
Right, for sure. But like I said, I liked that there was this, besides the whole, the writers, the creators didn't get so caught up in the big, the flashy stuff, the draw of the whole, let's go fight the monster kind of a thing, that they still took the time to give us this, this very uncomfortable love triangle thing that was going on, and having to come back and try to answer that, I thought was really interesting, a really interesting character kind of a thing.
So what do you think of the latest issue with them going back to the ice fisher, and more importantly, the relationship that she has with the one officer, and I think his name is Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Not the one that she is accused of murdering, but the other guy.
Right. The guy she actually works with, because the guy that she's accused of killing, right, is the guy that kind of brought her in, but he only brought her in because of her name. He recognized her name, and he was kind of the kind of policeman who was really looking for accolades to kind of get himself promoted into being something extra special because of the flash of the whole thing. Not that he was really concerned. You get the impression he's not really concerned so much with the police work as opposed to the fame,
the limelight,
the fame and limelight that goes along with it. Right. So she
right.
ends up so she ends up working with the other guy who's not concerned with that, but is more concerned with the actual, what's really going on. I loved it. I thought it was really interesting. I think it's interesting, her kind of she's trying to, just be a good person and be this police officer, and then gets herself involved in this stuff. And, the way she goes, her process obviously is questionable to the rest of the world, but it's really interesting. I'm excited to see how it all plays out. Beyond the fact that obviously she's being accused of murdering this guy at some point. That whole thing, how she came across that, is really interesting.
Yeah, and then there's also the characters of Bianca and I don't remember the other person's name. Lacey, Bianca and Lacey, and so and this is in the present day of it is called, Travis. It's called Coffin Hill, Massachusetts. So Coffin Hill is the name of the of the town, and then you have the Coffin Estate, but. You have Bianca. She quite clearly possesses some abilities, were shown in this issue. So she opens up a door. She just puts her fingers on it and opens up a door. Mm-hmm. And then when her and Lacey are in this place, I don't remember which place it is. There is a dark figure with glowing eyes.
It's the Hill Estate. They are trespassed on the Hill Estate, haven't they?
Oh, okay. That's what I was wondering. Or that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Flipping through this. So yeah, so there's that that force or a force. Who knows if this is the main thing, but there's something in there that will obviously play out. So maybe like I said, maybe my concerns are premature.
Well, I mean, the concern is you don't hear a lot of people talking about it. So it does make you wonder who out there is reading it.
Yeah, but also in terms of just opening up the story more to get more stuff going on, so it doesn't feel so, like I said, focused on just Eve and a few other characters, just expanding the universe. So I think that's where I'm finally seeing that now, building up here in issue number 8. So I take that all back. But yes, I am still concerned about not enough people reading this book.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else we want to say about Coffin Hill besides everyone should check it out?
Yep, first trade's out.
Yeah, the first trade, definitely. I'm just so enjoying it. It's like I said, this could be a really good movie, or even they could develop this into a TV series that I'd probably watch, as long as it wasn't on what is it, WB?
Yeah,
CW.
CW.
I don't.
I'm just happy it's a comic book. It doesn't need to be turned into a TV show or a movie or any of that kind of stuff for my enjoyment. So.
Well, but Travis, it's all about the IP now. All right. Speaking of IP and exploiting IP, that's being disingenuous. Batman Eternal, one of the 2 weeklies that DC is putting out. The other being the New 52 Futures End. So we have Batman Eternal. Let's see. So I'm up to issue 12 on this. And did you say that issue 13 just came out?
Just came out this last week, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have that yet. I'll get that in a week or two. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this is by the writers involved. There's a couple different artists. I'm only looking at issue 11 and 12, so maybe you can speak to this better than I can at the moment, Travis. But so the writers involved are Scott Snyder, Ray Fox, John Layman, James Tynion IV, and Tim Seeley. They're all kind of sharing certain storylines they're doing parts of. I believe Scott Snyder is kind of overseeing the whole thing, if I remember correctly. And then we have art on issue 11 by Ian Bertram, trying to do his best impersonation of what's his name from Batman Incorporated.
You think so? That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Chris Burnham.
Burnham, yeah.
Burnham,
yeah. I think so. It certainly has the similar. I mean, obviously it's not the same, but it has a very reminiscent look to Chris Burnham's work.
It's funny as I don't really care for Chris Burnham, but I thought this issue was fun.
Oh, really? See,
yeah.
I love Burnham's work.
Yeah, so don't at all.
Well, and there's what's her name in this issue?
Scorpion.
The Scorpion lady.
Uh-huh.
That's very much a Batman Incorporated Chris Burnham type character.
Right, because all of that stuff, that issue in particular, they spend it in South America, and of course that was explored with the Batman Incorporated stuff.
Yeah,
so.
with the Batman of that area, El Gaucho.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I love how he refers to himself as the Batman of that area.
Yes. Yeah.
I just can't imagine a guy who takes it upon himself to wear a mask and right wrongs and inflict justice would be okay with referring to himself as a derivative character.
Yeah.
But it's funny.
Yes.
And then the another artist on here, this is issue 12. This is by Michael or Mikkel, I don't know, Janin, who's doing, as you informed me, off mic, is doing Grayson, right?
Right.
Yeah. And whose work I like. I remember when Justice League Dark first started, Janin was on there. I'm like, ooh, I like this art. I like this person's art. Are there other artists involved in this, or is it just? Okay,
yes.
Go ahead.
To start out, it was Jason Fabok was the one who did the first couple, 2 or 3 issues to kick the whole thing off. Gilliam March has done a couple issues and some covers.
Right.
So I think, because obviously it's a weekly comic, and in this day and age, nobody's Jack Kirby, and they're lucky. They're lucky to get 20 to 22 pages done in a month. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of artists because we're talking 80 pages a month had to be done, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Wow. Yeah. I
So-
hadn't thought of it that way.
right, so and like I said, the only person I know that could even come close to that was Kirby back in his heyday. Supposedly did 71 to 77 pages a month, but
Holy moly.
yeah. But anyway, that's besides the point. Anyway, so we're going to see lots of artists. Lots of artists on it, which I think is amusing in some ways because some of the characters are really consistent looking, obviously Batman, and some of them are not so consistent looking, I don't think, throughout the book. So, which I think sometimes can be almost confusing.
I was going to say, do you find the different artist styles in a weekly book, or it doesn't matter if it's weekly or not, but maybe in a weekly book, somewhat detrimental to the storyline? Or
Well, I think anytime an artist changes a whole bunch, if they don't all kind of follow some level of preset, right? It can be jarring or whatever. And Lieutenant Bard, isn't that his name? I think is how you say his last name.
the guy that
The new
Gordon
guy-
brought in?
The
Yeah.
new guy that Gordon brought in is extremely inconsistent throughout these books. I mean, he's the one that to me is the problem. I mean, we can always recognize Bullock because Bullock's always going to be the heavier set cop that wears the tie, the coat, and the hat, and has a cigar. We all know who Bullock is. That's to me that's pretty easy. Gordon is pretty easy to recognize too. I think this new guy, Lieutenant Bard, sometimes looks exactly like Gordon because he wears glasses and stuff. Sometimes the two of them, to me, visually look like the same person. But throughout the first 11 or 12 issues, the guy's hairstyle has changed. I think there's been times when he's had longer hair and shorter hair. And so I'm always having to look at all the people around him to be for sure, unless his name comes up, to be for sure who I'm looking at. That's the only thing about the art changing that really bothers me. I know lots of people freaked out when, what's his name, the guy on issue, what was it, 11? His art style was so radically different from the rest of these issues that I know some people were kind of freaking out about that. But I don't know. The art hasn't bothered me otherwise. The art change really hasn't been that disruptive. Do you think it has?
No. I mean, no, I don't. But I know it's a weekly book and there's different artists, either if not every issue, every few issues. So I just expect it and I don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think the artist that they choose, like I said, with Bertram on there, they're very clearly calling back to the Batman Inc. stuff,
right?
With
the
characters involved and whatnot.
sense.
So it makes a lot of sense to me to have someone doing sort of a Chris Burnham type art.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I have to agree with you with as much as I like Janon's work, what you said about Bard. I went through issue 12 going, is that Bard or is that, and the reveal here is that Gordon's son, James, shows up in the last page. Well, if you look at James and how he's drawn, and then you look at Bard, to me, they look practically the same.
Right.
And maybe that's intentional. I don't know, but it seemed kind of weird.
Yeah. Oh, agreed.
But we should we should back up a little bit. Let's talk about what Batman Eternal, what the story is in general, as well. So,
good. You tell me what the story is in general.
Well, basically, two major things are going on, and they're related, of course, in some way. One is that Carmine Falcone is back in Gotham and trying to take over as the lead boss, right?
Trying to take back.
Take back his territory, right? So he's been in Hong Kong consolidating his power, and now he's back and he's taking it all. And he's got a plan, and he's got friends in places that are helping him out. Some of which I don't think we know of yet. And then related to that is Commissioner Gordon is being framed for the murder of, what is it, dozens or hundreds? Yeah. So he shoots a guy, supposedly an unarmed guy. He didn't think he was unarmed. But that causes a train in Gotham to wreck, and that's what kills all those people. So now he's on trial for that. Mm-hmm. So there's two major plot points going on there. And, of course, Batman is reacting to everything and trying to figure it all out. along with, Batgirl is, of course, concerned about her dad, and that's what issue 11 is about, her trying to figure out what's going on. Red Hood shows up. So all these appearances by all the Bat family folks have happened or will be happening over the course of this storyline. And, of course, Batman, like I said, Batman reacting to Falcone, doing what he's doing, and also trying to prove Gordon's innocence, and so far he has no evidence to suggest that Gordon didn't do this.
Right.
Which I think that's an interesting thing. Batman, supposedly the world's greatest detective, hasn't found anything yet. But then again, his attention is divided.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's basically it. What drew me in on this book, though, was the whole Falcone story. Him coming back and taking over as easily as he's done. Now, I was surprised at how much I actually enjoyed this.
There's actually kind of one other plot going on.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, so you've got those two things going on, but you also have the Clue Master and a group of other villains that supposedly have some super dark, deep thing that's going to go on that's going to be huge. And Stephanie Brown, his daughter, has somehow stumbled across whatever that knowledge is and is now in the Lamb as the Clue Master tries to get rid of her, right?
Oh, right. And of course she becomes spoiler.
Well, at some point she will.
Yeah.
But so that's another big part, because we don't know how whatever their crazy, huge, ominous plan is, how does that tie in with the Gordon thing and the Falcone thing?
I'm just assuming now at this point that it is somehow tied into Falcone's plan, but
see, because I
could be wrong about that.
I just don't think Falcone is the big fish.
No,
because we got shown the big fish way too early. If that's the case. So, yeah.
Well, or, maybe not big fish, but he's, like I said, he certainly has people helping him out in some way to be able to pull this off.
Mm.
And we haven't seen who that is yet.
Okay.
But why are you liking this story? Why are you reading it? This is a weekly comic. Are you getting it every week?
Yes, I am. I'm getting it every week.
It's a Batman weekly comic. Why are you getting this, Travis?
It's fun. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just been kind of a fun ride. I mean, I'm not taking it as being any critical work that I'm going to look back on and go, wow. But it's just been fun.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I took it too. It's just I started reading this and I really got into the whole. I really like the story of Falcone coming back and how Batman has to deal with that now. It just really interests me. And of course, Falcone has a debt to repay to Catwoman.
Yeah.
Which ties back into Batman Year One. Frank Miller's and Mazzucchelli's storyline from way back when. Because Falcone still has those scars from when Catwoman scratched him, and so he really wants to pay that back.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's just I'm really interested to see how. I mean, it really demonstrates how easily well, or maybe not easily, but from the outside looking in, it appears how easily Batman's control of his own city can unravel. I mean, this like I said, there's something else going on in the background. It's not just Falcone, but like he's the face. He's the face of the danger to Gotham, and I don't know if they're going to explore this, but just looking at it from my perspective, it's just I want to see how Batman deals with how quickly this happened to his city.
Uh-huh. Well, one of the biggest things is kind of interesting is we get rid of one policeman and how quickly that all comes apart at the seams.
Yeah, because Falcone puts in a patsy as commissioner essentially, mm-hmm. and the guy is basically turning a blind eye to the gang war that's going on and pursuing Batman only. Mm-hmm. That's it. And a lot of the cops, including our Lieutenant Bard, is not happy about it, and Bullock too. But so that's those character bits are really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. That interplay between all these characters in Gotham.
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder why they're calling it Batman Eternal? What does the Eternal have to do with it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Other than it just sounds cool, I don't know.
Because thematically, I'm not seeing the connection there between what we're presented as the story, and it's only a dozen or so issues in at this point, and the whole Eternal thing.
Yeah, we're only a couple months in. Well, I mean, or is the Batman Eternal supposed to imply that by the time this thing's all said and done, Batman wins and the Batman family wins? So, Batman Eternal. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a pretty tenuous connection there, but that's I came to that conclusion too. Is like, well, I guess that's what that means, maybe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just find it interesting. What I don't find interesting, so you talked about this is your first real foray into reading weekly comics, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So you didn't read 52.
I read it in trades.
Yeah, and so I read 52 as it was coming out, mm-hmm. and it's a good story. Would you say it's a good story? Did you like that story?
I loved it.
I think it's generally considered a really good weekly comic. Now, of course, once you do something and it sells well and it gets a lot of good press mm-hmm. or good feedback from your audience, what do? Well, you put out more product, right? So then they came out with, I think it was Countdown next, mm-hmm. and I read that, but it was, I think, universally panned. And then they came out with Trinity, which was okay. And I think that was it as far as like year-long weekly stories. They did some other weekly series, but they weren't as long. I'm thinking of Wednesday Comics.
Right.
There's some other things I'm forgetting at the moment. So, but this is the first time that they've done a weekly series in the New 52, other than Future's End, which, quite honestly, I'm thinking of dropping.
Oh yeah, really?
Because I'm just not. It's not as interesting as this, as a Batman comic. And do we really need another Batman comic on the shelves?
Right.
I'm torn about this, Travis.
Yeah. I'm not getting that one. I decided I would just get that in trade because I wasn't sure exactly what that was going to be about. And usually a Batman story, unless it's really bad, I can get some enjoyment out of it because I like Batman and the whole Gotham world and whatnot. But I've been hearing people who really love the Future's End. They think it's a better story is being told there than is being told in Batman Eternal. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd really be interested in hearing why they think that, because I just don't think so. A lot of what's in Future's End to me, it seems to like retread kind of stuff, because Brother Eye is in there.
Right.
I just feel like I've read a version of this story before.
And you don't feel like that with Batman? With Batman Eternal?
Other than just the general Batman has a mystery to solve, but the way that the places they're going with this a little bit. So Falcone coming back is somewhat new in a way. Gordon being on trial for this, yeah, I'm fairly certain they've done stories like that, mm-hmm. but I've not read anything like this. Of course, I didn't read a lot of Batman comics. I've read the series off and on, but I didn't read a lot. I'm sure you've read a lot more Batman stuff than I have over the years.
Right.
So you could probably speak better to it. But to me, this is kind of new and different. Whereas Future's End is like, oh, I've kind of read this stuff before.
Oh, okay. There's some stuff in this that's somewhat treading the same ground that's been tread before. I mean, because it is a Batman book, and they're only going to venture so far out of. I'm curious as much because I'm a Batman fan to see where this leads the Batman universe to by the time it's done. Because I was given the impression before this whole thing started out is that this was going to take Gotham from point A to point whatever that Scott Snyder wanted at the very end. So it all matched up with what his vision of what Gotham and Batman and all that was supposed to ultimately end up being like. So I'm curious to see what that is and how it gets executed, from a long-term perspective. And I'm excited to see some of the new characters, new/old characters they're going to put back into the, into the DC universe that were taken out of the DC universe for a while. So, and to see how those things end up ultimately playing out, I'll be, curious to see what that all ends up being like too.
Which characters are you referring to? Spoiler,
Harper.
Harper Row.
Row. We know she's going to be called Bluebird.
Bluebird, right? Yeah.
So curious as to how she gets to that point, because that, like I said, that spoiler that we got in the Batman issue 30 or 29 or whatever issue it was.
Oh, right, that break in the 0 year story where that was weird.
In the entire issue, it's a spoiler because it's set somewhere it's set somewhere into the middle of Batman Eternal somewhere.
Right, because they wanted to promote Batman Eternal coming out, so they did that I guess preview type thing,
which was bad. I don't think that was a good thing to do. I mean, I'm curious about it, but now we know what's gonna happen up to that point in some sense. How we get there, I guess we don't know, but obviously spoilers. That leads us to know that somehow Catwoman is in charge of most of the crime families. She seems to be in charge of the whole underworld. From that, the implications of that. Of course, you got a spoiler. You got Harper as Bluebird, and she's, I don't know, seems pretty combat savvy as she's flipping herself upside down and swinging down a boot line, shooting people and stuff. Where'd she, where did she develop this skill set at? And, some of that stuff is interesting and questionable as to how that all works. So, I'm curious to see how that all comes around. Mostly, I'm curious to see how Catwoman ends up in the position she's in, because that strikes me as not being Celine Kyle's style.
Not to mention being put into conflict with Batman if she takes that mantle on.
Right.
Because up to this point, we talked about Forever Evil last episode, but we didn't really talk about Catwoman's involvement in that. But she kind of played Batman's sidekick a bit during that whole run. And then there's one point where she, I think it's towards the end of that series, though. Basically, she's trying to implore Batman to let her in, let her help him, emotionally, more or less, and he rejects her.
Right.
And now we have this situation in Batman Eternal. So obviously, to me, the Batman Eternal follows all those events. And but we haven't seen the complete fallout of what occurred between those two characters in Forever Evil.
Right.
And so maybe we'll get to see that here develop.
Could be.
I'm really surprised that you are enjoying this.
Why?
Being a weekly comic. I don't know, because I think of it in a way it's kind of an event book. Not really, but in a way it is.
Sure.
And so, given your outlook on.
Well, I guess here's the thing: is it doesn't feel like an event book because it's not per se screwing with anything else. It isn't have tie-ins. It's not forcing right now anyway. It's not forcing any of the other books I read to behave in some other different fashion based on the consequences of this. This feels like a normal Batman story to me. I'm just getting it 4 times a month instead of once a month. So basically, as fast as I can read it and digest it and go, oh, that was cool, the next one's sitting in my lap for me to get a hold of, instead of having this month-long period for me to either forget about it if it wasn't interesting, or it has too many weak points into it, or gives me so much time to think it that I can, pick apart something in it that I really don't care to. I don't have enough time to analyze it past the point of being good. So I'm enjoying it for that. Now, the reason I didn't pick up the Future Ends one is because it did feel more like an event book, and it is turning out to be that way. And the fact is, we know come September, every single damn comic in the DC universe is going to have a 5-year in the future issue come out in September. That's going to be, DC every September now has some spectacle go on. That's going to be the spectacle. That frustrates me, and that would frustrate me because that has all the feelings of an event book. Nothing about this feels like an event book. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't.
Okay.
To me, it doesn't have that. It's a very quick Batman story because it feels like a Batman story because it's purely Gotham. It's not nothing. Even Gordon being suspected of murder and Falcone coming back, none of this stuff feels so huge right now to me and out of control as to be a spectacle. It still feels like a Batman story. Now, if suddenly we find out that Darkseid is behind the whole thing, then it suddenly would feel like some sort of event spectacle, and I'd start rolling my eyes and going, "Oh man," or it bleeds over badly into the other books or whatever. Then that might be different. But right now, like I said, it just feels like a very fast because I'm getting to read an extra Batman comic, every week. It's a fast reading Batman story.
So why do you think that they did it this way? Why a weekly comic? They could have just as easily put this into Detective Comics or even the Batman title. Why a weekly one?
Money? No, seriously, that's certainly what it's about.
You're so jaded.
No, Batman books sell. It's pretty clearly
that's
that
true.
Batman books sell. This is something a little different because it is a weekly book. So that piques people's interest. It piqued mine. Oh, a monthly Batman book. I wonder what that's going to be like. Because, I'm the first person to say I don't know that we need any more Batman books. But if it's a Batman book I enjoy, give it to me. So I think that's why. I think, Batman's really popular right now. People are liking Batman. This gives us more of a traditional Batman story. If you're sick to death of Zero Year, you could jump on this and get to read just a straightforward Batman story. Because that's what this reads like to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's...
Oh, yeah, I agree with that, definitely.
So
it just seemed weird that they would do a weekly book as opposed to just putting out another monthly book telling the same story.
Well, but they can put out 4 a month this way, though.
Yeah, they're quadruple shipping.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's really what it is. And people buy it, obviously. People buy it. The sales model for both of the big two show that if you put out more than one book in a month of the same thing, that people who are collecting it will keep buying it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And remind me, I might be wrong about this, Travis, but I think I remember reading that DC Editorial came to Snyder with this idea, not the other way around, and asked him to oversee it.
He actually initially wasn't interested in doing it. He didn't want to do it. And my understanding is they came to an understanding of how it was, how it would work, that they could use this to, like I said, move Gotham to a place that Scott Snyder's hoping to have Gotham at some point down the road. And this is a tool to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his most involvement in it was kind of to get the basics of what that was going to be. And now you've got these other 4 writers. And actually, I think 3, because I don't know how many Layman's doing anymore, because I think he kind of stepped away from the project. Them telling stories that have this, whatever the larger picture is, touched upon while they tell these other stories about this other stuff. So I think the big thing is the Falcone thing and all that is the greater big thing. And then you've got that Snyder wanted involved in it, I think. And then you have these smaller stories about the Harper, about Spoiler. The one weird, it was this book, right? The one weird story that was in it was the one with the Spectre, right? That was in one of these, wasn't it? One of these Batman Eternals had the Spectre in it. Am I remembering that right? I don't have the books all in front of me.
I don't either. I don't remember.
And they send Batwing off to go check something out.
Oh yeah. Yes.
That was weird.
I think that's right.
That issue was just plain weird all around. The characterization of the Spectre is weird. I think there's supposed to be some mystical thing, and then no one's touched on that again. So that one issue just felt really strange. The Spectre showing up in Corrigan's body, to have a conversation with Bruce, and then going off to explore whatever, and then we haven't gone back. That's the one storyline we haven't touched back on yet. I just keep waiting for that to show back up because that just seemed really weird. That was the one inconsistent to me out of the whole thing so far.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I just think it's been kind of fun. I mean, like I said, I don't know that it's, something years from now we're going to be, still talking about or whatever. But right now, it's just been kind of an enjoyable, fun Batman book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And speaking of consistency, if we could, Batman and I don't know what to call this comic anymore. The former Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I call it Batman and. That's what
Batman and. I do too. That's what I do too. But this, I want to talk about this a little bit. So speaking of consistency, Batman and has been. I just read issue 32, which is Batman and Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
So the Hunt for Robin storyline. Talk about a consistently well told comic book. Not just because it's Batman or anything having to do with that. Just Pete Tomasi and Patrick Gleason are just killing on this book.
Yes.
And we've talked about this too. I think on our best of 2013 episode, I talked about this, and I'm gonna talk about it again because, like Coffin Hill, I don't hear people talking about Batman and.
Yeah.
It's either they talk about Zero Year and how much they don't like it, and just Batman sells in general, right? So, but what we get here in Batman and is just this really cool examination of a father and son, and now a father's grief over the death of his son, and how that affects everything else around him, including all the characters he runs into, except for the whole Two-Face storyline. That was kind of a weird interlude. And not that it was told badly or anything. It was just not consistent with what came before and what's come after it. But
okay,
you disagree with that?
I really like that. I like that.
Well, I'm not saying I didn't like it. I just thought it was just kind of a different kind of vibe from what we were getting with this other stuff involved in the title.
Well, yeah, because it didn't directly relate with Batman and Robin. You're right in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
And I'm not saying it. Every story has to be about Robin. That like we've been seeing, but. It just seemed. It was just a weird. Not a weird. It just kind of stuck out to me a little bit. But here we go. I just wanted to mention because this story with Ra's al Ghul specifically, and Frankenstein's in it too, because the previous issue was Batman and Frankenstein. Well, now Frankenstein's still helping Batman out, but Ra's is front and center. They're fighting because he's trying to resurrect Damien and take over the world with Damien at his side. And so they're at the former location of, Nanda Parbat, which has disappeared. And I think it has to do with events in Justice League Dark, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So now one of the Lazarus pits that could not be accessed before because Nanda Parbat was there is now accessible. So now Ra's has taken his grandson there. Of course, Bruce wants nothing to do. Doesn't want him to do this, so he's been tracking Ra's for a while now. And I just want to talk about this scene. So this is what got me. So they've been fighting this whole issue, and finally, Batman has taken Robin's coffin back to the Batplane, and Ra's is caught up with him. And there's this one page where it's just these really thin panels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going down the page, and it shows Ra's talking to Batman, walking towards him. Batman's not moving; he just keeps his back to Ra's the whole time, and basically Ra's is saying, everyone you care about will be forever at risk. Pennyworth, your Bat disciples, Gotham. There will be blood, Batman, not just on my hands, but yours too. And then that's when Batman turns to him, faces him, and says, "No, there won't, Ra's. and then the next page is a full splash page. Because if you try to take Damien's body again, I'm going to kill you and make sure you never come back. Mm-hmm. And that just like, holy crap! Yeah. That's, Batman. And sure, Batman threatens people all the time, but I get the feeling that he actually means it this time.
Yeah, he's sincere. Yeah.
And it would take something like this, the death and what desecration is the word I'm looking for, mm-hmm. of his son to push him to that limit. And that just, that to me is just indicative of the emotional core of this book.
For sure.
And from day one, Tomasi and Gleason have been doing this. Mm-hmm. 3 years now they've been doing this. Mm-hmm. And it's just been incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been an amazing book. And those moments are the moments that, I think for a lot of us make the book just great. These raw moments of Bruce, and him having to deal with, this whole death of his son and the different stages of that and whatnot. And yeah, definitely in this one, I truly believe the way that's delivered, that's really, he sincerely means that, he's gonna bury him, and he's not coming back from it, So it's, and he messes him up pretty good. I mean, that fight goes on. I mean, part of me is a small little bit concerned with the final page of this issue.
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
Because I don't know, that it's been such a personal book. I mean, even with everything that's gone on, it's always been very personal. Even the Two-Face stuff is very personal. And this big thing that's at the end of it potentially feels less personal. You know what I mean?
It's definitely expanding the confines of the story,
right?
To be something completely outside of the purview of what we've seen so far,
right? And so that makes me nervous that this whole, Robin Rises Omega thing could be the wrong kind of spectacle. I mean, I know it's going to be him coming back, and we all pretty much know he's coming back. Robin coming back is going to be some sort of a spectacle in some sense. It kind of surprised me for it to be this, potentially, that it's going to be this level of cosmic involvement in it. So,
have we said what that is?
No.
So, on the last page of this issue, Glorious Godfrey shows up with a bunch of parademons behind him, saying "Salutations from Apocalypse."
Yeah.
And then it says at the bottom, next, Red Dawn and Robin Rises Omega. Did you order that Robin Rises special?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I'm not, most people know I'm not a big Robin fan. Generally, I really like Damien as Robin. I've come to love the little bugger. hated to see him killed. I mean, we got some great stories out of it, but still hated to see him dead because we were getting such great stories, before that. So I'm excited to have him back. Excited that these are the guys that are going to be, going to be bringing back. I think the Omega one is actually, the art's done by Kubrick. Is that right? I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, we have the same people who've been writing these great personal stories are going to be the ones that are moving forward with it. So I'm excited that they're the ones that are getting to do it. I just hope it comes across as cool as opposed to more event bookish. But that last page did make me nervous, the whole apocalypse thing and whatnot. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's not a Batman thing. So that, which, I mean, that may mean it could be really good. It could be really cool. I'm looking forward to getting back. And hopefully he's not so messed up that we can't go back to some of the great stuff that we had.
Are you referring to Robin, getting Robin back?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for you, it's a foregone conclusion that Damian Wayne will be back as Robin and have adventures with his dad.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think so. You don't think so?
No, I do. What I am kind of hoping for is that we don't get that necessarily, just because it would just play against expectations. But I miss the guy too.
So I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's something to be said for this whole process that they've gone through, and they've wonderfully gotten to write this whole. I mean, we've spent almost a year, right? Wasn't it like was like 18 or 19 was the issue that is the silent issue where he just thrashes stuff. So
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So we've gone a long time of, granted we had that space in there where he didn't have time to grieve because he was dealing with the whole Two-Face thing, but going through this whole process, and I've really enjoyed that, and I'm really happy. This is one of those few books where editorial has allowed them to, in prior shows, we've talked about the fact that one of the problems we're having with DC right now is they're not allowing, characters to develop and have the ability to actually feel like they have flesh and bone on them. This is one of those books that's been allowed to do that, and it's been wonderful because of it. So
yeah,
definitely. You're right. To some degree, for them just to pop Damian back and it all go back to the way it was, there's a potential for that to kind of, lessen that whole thing to some degree.
Exactly.
But I still really jonesing for more of the Damian Bruce interaction. I can't help it. It's one of those. It's just I've loved it so much that
I know.
I'm looking forward to it coming back in some sense. I'm going to trust these guys that he comes back, and obviously he ain't going to go back exactly to the way it was. There's no way. Bruce isn't going to just simply go, oh yeah, just go out and do whatever the hell you were doing before. I would assume he's going to be even stricter now than he was before about how paranoid he is of the antics that, that Damian got himself up to. If he suddenly does get this, get his son back even remotely close to the way he was before, I'm looking forward to reading that.
Yeah, me too. Oh my gosh. I just can't get over the fact how much we both love that character, especially since we both came from the point of view of who is this snot-nosed brat?
And he really was a punk. He really was. Yeah. But no, I know plenty of people I talk to on Twitter and whatnot that if they were actually honestly asked what Batman title they like best right now, this is the title that they're going to call. This is the title they'll say. This title there's been cool stuff happening in the other titles, but this is the most consistently cool Batman book that's out.
Oh, so it's just more than you and me.
Right, yeah.
Excellent. I'm really curious, though. I bring up sales, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm really curious how this title stacks up against the other Batman titles.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, nothing could beat Batman, right? Because that's Batman's the title that they judge all other sales by is Batman.
That's true. Which is really funny because it never used to be that way. Do you remember the olden days, Travis, when before the 1989 Batman movie? Batman was not all that
right
in terms of sales, and in fact, at one point, I know DC was considering canceling the title.
I don't really believe that, but.
Well, if you believe the stories,
yes.
But regardless, Batman just was not a huge seller for them until that movie, and it's amazing to me that the momentum is kept on these many years later. Mm-hmm. Of course, it didn't hurt that right before the 1989 Batman movie, Frank Miller did The Dark Knight Returns and.
The character fundamentally changed, though, too. That's part of it.
That's true.
Is that anybody who gave it a chance was suddenly reading a completely different Batman than the Batman that was before it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because I remember because you were getting Batman, and I was reading your issues, and I remember there was the Nocturne character. Yep. There was that storyline, and that was about. I think maybe my memory is wrong, but I remember thinking that that story was like right before The Dark Knight Returns came out, and then, like you said, then suddenly Batman was the badass Batman that we've all kind of lived with.
Right.
Obviously they've changed things in the New 52. He's less of the badass know-it-all. I am always right kind of Batman, although they've kept certain elements of that. But he's less intense these days, but still, essentially, that's the core of his character still.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
But it wasn't always like that, kids.
Right.
All right, Travis. I think we're done. I was going to talk about some other things, but we are over an hour now talking about these three things. So we'll save some of these other books. We're going to talk about Wicked and Divine, but maybe we'll wait for a couple issues and then come back and talk about that, because that was highly anticipated since you and I both loved McKelvey and what's his name? Gillen on Young Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
And here they are doing this book now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another book too that I recently went to the comic book shop in Spokane and got some comics up there, and the book Cowl, Cowl, was issues number 1 and 2 were on the shelves, and I grabbed those because I was interested in the book, but at the time I was wanting to kind of not spend so much every month, and so I decided I would wait for the trade on that thing. But then I saw the 2 issues there. I'm like, gosh, I really want to read those.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked them up, and I'm really enjoying it. So I want to talk about those with you because you're reading both of those, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a little preview for a future episode. Okay. So that's it. Our talk about Coffin Hill and Batman.
Yep.
Please let me know if you have any thoughts about either of those titles or anything that we brought up in this episode. I'd love to hear from you. You can do that by sending me email at longboxreview@gmail.com. Or in other ways, if you go to the feedback page on longboxreview.com, so longboxreview.com/feedback. Travis, let them know where they can find you at.
You can find me on YouTube. Just type in Oddfellow's Thoughts, and you should come up with me.
Yeah, go watch his videos. I love Travis's What the Fugue stuff. That's actually, quite honestly, Travis, that's where I get a lot of my news from the comic book world. I read comic book resources and Bleeding Cool and other places too where I get news. But I kind of wait and I watch your What the Fugues, and I get some news that's been consolidated down on those episodes. So I really appreciate that you do that.
Sure,
saves me the time from having to do.
That's right.
All right. Thanks again, Travis. It's been wonderful talking to you. First on that Forever Evil episode, and now these comics. So I love talking with comics with you.
It's been a pleasure.
All righty. Everybody else, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. See you next time.